Okay, so thank you for joining the Injury Prevention for Runners workshop. This is session 3, and I will be talking today about adjusting your stride when running, and also how to best sense the ground when you run. So, the important thing that we need to remember as runners, or even as walkers or hikers, is that we're asymmetrical. Inside, even though we look symmetrical on the outside, our trunk and torso are very asymmetrical, and the way our neurology is set up in our brain, and thusly throughout our body, is also asymmetrical. And so that makes us move asymmetrically. This isn't a bad thing. It's also not just what I think or the way I was trained. It's just the reality of how we're made. We have three lung lobes on the right, and only two on the left to make space for the heart. So we're naturally kind of pushed over to the right because we don't have as much density here on the left. Also, the left diaphragm leaflet, so that left half of your diaphragm is a little bit smaller and flatter than the right side. That right side has that nice dome, and that dome gives us that stability and support. We have a liver under there that stabilizes us there further. The diaphragm attaches lower on the spine on the right, so that's also going to pull us over to the right. And all these things are going to bury us into our right leg a little bit, so to speak. So the thing that happens when we run is we kind of get pushed into our right side for stance phase more often than we get to our left, or we get into right stance phase better than we get into swing phase on the left leg. Conversely, we're better at swinging the left leg than we are swinging the right leg. So when we're running or walking or hiking, one leg is always standing, the other leg is always swinging. In running, we do have this moment of time where both feet are airborne, but there's still one leg that pushed off and one leg that was striding forward. So we want our left leg, first of all, to be a better standing leg, because if we can't get over and stabilize well on that left side, we can't really shift well right to left, and we end up doing weird things that we call in physical therapy compensations. And that's where a lot of these injuries come from. Those injuries where you're like, this hurts, and I just don't know why. You didn't have a specific injury or anything like that. It's usually something that you've been doing that's subtle but repeated over time to make up for these natural asymmetries. Or some other injury you've had in the past further pushed you over onto your right side or made you move differently somewhere else. And so we need to really address that root cause for you to be able to run without pain and to prevent injuries in the future. So if you want a little more on the anatomy of all of that, you can look at session 1, and that will be on my YouTube channel, and I will include links to all of those in the chat. Um, So back to the asymmetry right to left. So as a runner, you really want to be able to first get into a left stance phase really well. And that will mean that your pelvis will orient to the left, aka your pant zipper will turn a little to the left so that you can be getting the left ball and socket. So your thigh bone sits nicely into the socket and you're standing over that leg with your weight in that leg. Also, your left abdominals will contract, which means that your left diaphragm will need to dome up. Now, remember that left diaphragm leaflet is smaller and flatter than the right side. So we have to work a little harder to get those left ribs down than we do on the right side. And when the ribs come down, the diaphragm domes up. Remember, that right side wants to do that. That left side's a little harder to get. So you might even notice when you run, like one shoulder is lower than the other when you look at yourself in the mirror. Yes, that has something to do with handedness, and handedness and which arm we prefer to use has something to do with our cortical structure and the way our brain is wired asymmetrically. But a lot of that asymmetry in our shoulders is actually representative of an asymmetry of being able to stabilize through our rib cage. So to demonstrate that, I want you to try this little experiment with me. So you're just going to stand up if you're not standing. And then you're going to shift your weight into your right leg. And you're going to take your pant zipper. If you don't have a zipper, just imagine the center seam of your pants. And you're just going to lift your left leg up in front of you and try and turn your pant zipper towards your right big toe. So I'm not going all the way over there. I'm just going over there a little bit just so it's pointing to my big toe, and I'm just seeing if I can stand with my left leg lifted like that. And that might be hard for you just to do that. But you want to go ahead and see if you can do that on that side. Try it on the other side. So stand into your left leg, then turn so you feel your left heel, your left midfoot to arch, and then turn your zipper to your left big toe and float your right leg up. And for a lot of us, this will be harder because of our natural asymmetry, or you'll notice that you'll say, oh yeah, I can do that, but you may have turned your zipper away from your left big toe because you're compensating by standing on that leg without being in stance phase. So that's not true for everyone, but for most people, unless you've worked on it specifically, that'll be a little harder to do on your left side. So that's just a little trick you can try and see for yourself where you're at right now. So another thing that is going to help you shift better to your left and thusly be able to shift better right to left is the ability to use your upper body to help you transition side to side in your lower body. So think about the ground pushing up under your feet and your feet pushing back down on the ground. As a runner, this is very significant because you want to be able to push yourself forward instead of pulling yourself forward. Pushing yourself forward with your glutes and your hamstrings instead of pulling yourself forward with your hip flexors and your neck. Another piece about forward locomotion is to be able to get that ground push up and you pushing back into the ground. Your shoulder blades provide that compression downwards into the ground. So think of it this way. Shoulder blades compress down, opposite ground pushes up, so you get a diagonal compression. And this helps keep your core stability and your connection of ribs to pelvis, therefore stable diaphragm, therefore flexion, which allows you to rotate. And that propels you forward in a way that your body really likes. That's really healthy. As we talked about in the first and second session, we have a tendency as runners to extend. It's a very extended activity, and that's not a bad thing, but we need to also be able to neutralize and come back to neutral by flexing, because in an extension pattern, we cannot rotate. And if you cannot rotate your trunk, you're going to rotate somewhere else, like your knees or your ankles, or even at your neck, or your low back or your SI joints. And you're going to wonder why you have pain there. Well, some of those joints aren't meant to have the capacity to rotate your entire body if you're missing this rotation. So coming back to the shoulder blades, when you're on your left leg, when you're in left stance and you're working to find that left ground push up, you can use a right shoulder blade to help you. And this is the beauty of human design, right? When we're walking or running and we're swinging our arms, our left leg will be forward when our right arm is, well, let me show you. It's harder to explain versus just showing you. So opposite arm to opposite leg. So left leg forward, right arm forward. So this is my left leg being in swing phase. If I want to improve my left leg stance phase, I'm going to shift onto my left leg, and my right arm's going to come back, left arm's going to come forward, and I can use that right arm coming back to create compression through my right shoulder blade And then I don't know if you can see, but it's that pressure of that shoulder blade is kind of compressing me down. I'm getting more ground on the left side by using my right shoulder blade. Now, obviously, nobody actually runs like that. That's an exaggeration, but to a small degree, with every stride, that's what you want to be happening. You want to use your shoulder blades to compress you diagonally as the ground pushes up diagonally. And because of the asymmetries that we talked about just a moment ago, it will be easier for you to find this on the right side. So when you're on your right leg, you bring your right arm forward, left arm back for right stance. And my left arm knows how to push me onto my right side. My right side knows how to be a standing leg. Of course, there are exceptions, and some of us are so extended both sides that we don't have the ground on either side. So if you're going, you know what, I don't feel any compression when I bring my arm back, my neck just hurts, or I just don't have that sense at all, that means you need to work first on getting that flexion back, getting your heels on the ground, and just developing your sense of the ground before you start doing right-left activities. So go back to session 1, and that's on my YouTube channel, and I'll include links to all of that, and work on some of the exercises for flexion before moving on to some of this side-to-side stuff. If you are doing this, you stand up and try this, and you stand onto your left leg, bring your right arm back, left arm forward, and you can kind of sense when you bring your right arm back that just pressure under your shoulder blade, and maybe that helps you sense your left heel more, and maybe as you sense your left heel, you feel your right shoulder blade more, or you're starting to get a sense of that. I'm going to show you now a very powerful and seemingly simple exercise that's great for runners, especially if you're further along in your rehab and you're just in that injury prevention phase. This is going to help set you up really well for your run. It's going to give good information into your body on what to do right to left. And it's good to do after your run as well, because it helps clean up some of the extension and patterning that we get into just by doing a repetitive activity like running. So I'm going to see if I can get a full view of me here. So the only thing you're going to need for this exercise is maybe a book. So here I have one of my handy dandy physical therapy textbooks that I keep all of them. I'm not sure that I look at them that often, but they make great props for exercises. So it's about 1 inch to 2 inches thick. That's probably all you'll need. I'm just going to put this on the floor in front of me, in front of my right foot. So you're going to just put your right foot on the book, and then your left leg is a little bit behind you, toes point forward. Now, the first thing here you want to see is if you can get your zipper to your left big toe. My pant zipper, if I had a zipper, would be right here at my pubic bone, and I'm just turning that pubic bone so it drops right over my left big toe. I'm not going all the way over here. It's just a little rotation. And then I'm going to exhale, connect lower ribs to upper pelvis. Then if I have that, and I'm sensing my left heel to midfoot, I'm going to bring my left arm forward, right arm back. And I'm starting to feel some pressure under my right shoulder blade, especially if I connect it through here. If you have that, you can pick up your right foot, but make sure that you didn't lose your zipper going to the left. So zipper goes left, right foot comes up, right arm back, left arm forward, and then you breathe here, sensing your left heel to midfoot, exhaling completely through your mouth and pausing before inhaling again. And if you're doing this correctly, you should feel your left hamstrings, your left inner thigh, maybe even your left abs a little bit as you exhale. So that's teaching left stance phase of running gait or walking gait or hiking gait. Gait is just our PT way of saying walking. Getting that compression, left ground pushes up, right shoulder blade pushes down. And you don't need to go back and do this on your other side. If you're at a place where you feel like you need to do that, you probably need to do some work before, some simpler exercises that I went over in session 1. So go back to session 1 if you missed that one. This is, if you go back and do this on the other side, make sure you do it more often standing on the left leg, because remember, you're asymmetrical. Just by your biology, by your neurology, by the physical way you're made up, you're asymmetrical. So if you go and do the same thing on the other side, you'll kind of undo the good work that you did by doing it on this side. So I know that's new for some people and hard to accept or understand, but it is just the anatomy. It's not what I think, it's just what we're working with. So, and if you have questions or things are confusing, please do send me an email or send me a chat in the chat box, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go. And I do want to mention, if you do have questions, just type them in there and I'll answer them all at the end. So if you think of stuff as we go, just type them in the chat box. Okay. So similar to what we just talked about then, when you're running, what should you think about when you're running? So we just spent a lot of time talking about why we have a hard time getting into left stance phase. And we talked a little bit about why your right leg has a harder time being in swing phase. Your right leg loves to be your standing leg. Your left leg loves to be your swinging leg. So we want to teach, when you run, we want to encourage your left leg to be a standing leg and your right leg to be a swinging leg. Also, we talked about by your anatomy, because of your anatomy, how your lower pelvis will be pulled over to the right by your diaphragm, and your pelvis is oriented to the right, so your pant zipper is turning to the right to be over that right leg. What I didn't mention is that our bodies do this very clever thing where it rotates our trunk back around to the left so that we can face forward, right? Because you wouldn't really be able to engage with your world very well if you're trying to walk forward, turn to the right. So this is a compensation of bringing our trunk around to the left. So to correct that, what we want to do is shift our pelvis, so turn zipper back to the left to correct for that right pelvis rotation, and then bring our trunk back around to the right. And that's what you just did in that last exercise, is you stood on your left leg, brought your zipper to the left, so your pelvis went left, and then you brought your right arm back, which rotated your trunk back to the right. And it's just interesting to play with how this feels different on the other side. Like, this feels so much easier to me to just be here. It's just more natural, versus this side, it's more work. That's because I'm a human being. It's the way I'm made, even though I work on it. So when you're running, you want to think about striding out with your right leg and your left arm. I'll say that again. When you're running, you want to think about striding out with your right leg and your left arm. Because of what we just talked about, that right leg striding out is teaching that right leg to be a swinging leg, and it's making you spend more time on your left leg. That left arm reaching out is starting to rotate your trunk back around to the right to make up for that left trunk rotation compensation. So when you're running, it doesn't have to be every moment of every run, but maybe you just look at your watch and say, for the next minute, I'm going to focus on striding out with my right leg and my left arm. Just to be clear, that's not going to fix a lot of underlying issues. You have to do some specific exercises, and you might need more help to correct some patterns that are deeply ingrained. But as a runner, it's just a good idea to generally think about striding out more with your right leg and your left arm to keep yourself from getting too patterned. Because when we're too patterned, we're stuck. When we're stuck, we don't move well. When we don't move well, our bodies are unhappy and we start to have pain syndromes. The other thing that I wanted to mention that is important, and it's a little bit of review from session 1, I touched on this a little bit, is first we need flexion, which is ribs coming down to pelvis and being able to breathe into our upper back, because that allows rotation. So if you're trying to implement these things, but your ribs are up and you're stuck in extension, it's not going to work for you. You're going to still have back pain or hip pain or knee pain. So I do want to reiterate, it's first important to find that flexion before you're doing a lot of this right-left rotation work. So go back to session 1 and take a peek at that if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Okay. I want to share with you another exercise that I actually showed in session 2. And this is going to be having to do with how to sense the ground when you run. So if we just think about the anatomy again, we like to stand on our right leg, which means our right foot is kind of pulled up into a supinated position. If this is my foot and these are my toes, supination means the arch is lifting and I'm onto the outer edge of my foot. The left foot will tend to be in a pronated position, so the arch is kind of dropping down. So let's try this together, just to feel what it feels like. So if you stand up, and you shift your weight to the outside edge of your right foot and the inside edge of your left foot, you're over on your right side. So not to this degree. For some of us, yes, to this degree. We're kind of living on, we're definitely living in our right leg or right side, right abs, right diaphragm, and that will concurrently result in being on the outside of your right foot, inside of your left foot, i.e. right foot supination, left foot pronation, right? It's kind of like you're skiing, but you just stopped on this side and then you just kept going from there. So what we want is left foot supination, right foot pronation. And what that does is it allows you to let go of your right side. As runners or athletes, we are very good at working and pushing and turning stuff on and engaging and doing more. But this piece of letting go is a lot harder, right? It's harder to just soften and release so that you can actually get to your left side. A lot of times I see people over on their left side, but they're kind of fake over there because their right side's still pulling them back. That right inner thigh is still pulling them up back. That right arch is still pulling up. So if you can learn to soften that right arch to the ground, it's going to be a lot easier for you to transition right, left, right, left. So on your left side, you want to sense your left heel to midfoot. On your right side, you want to sense your right arch, which is going to let you shift to the left. So when you're running, just be aware you're not trying to smush your right foot down or anything like that. You just are aware of the right arch of your shoe. You're just putting that awareness in your brain. Okay, I have a right shoe arch. I'm just going to feel it. I'm not going to smush my foot down. Just going to sense that it's there. And that's enough for your brain to shift over to the left. It's about sensing. It's not about forcing or pushing or squishing or anything like that. So we're going to go on a little field trip to my stairwell, and I'm going to show you the same exercise that I showed you in the last session, in session 2, but we're going to pay more attention to where we're sensing the ground in our feet. And this exercise is called retro stairs. So let's go to the stairs. Might have a cameo from my dog. So if you don't have stairs, you can just use a step stool or a ledge or one step and just do the exercise repeatedly. Okay, it's a little bit of a strange angle, but I think you can get the idea. So I'm going to go up the stairs backwards. So start with both feet on one step, then I'm going to put my left leg on the next step up, and I'm going to turn my zipper to my left big toe. Again, I'm not doing this, right? I'm just turning my pant zipper. I'm not letting my whole leg go out. My legs stay where they are, just my pant zipper. And then I'm going to connect ribs to pelvis, because when we're going up the stairs, we tend to arch our back and stick our butt out. So I want you to connect and just stay here, breath reaching your right arm forward, left arm back, feeling that stretch in your left outer hip. And then after a couple breaths there, sense some weight through your left heel to midfoot. Inhale, and then as you exhale, you're gonna push through left midfoot to bring your right foot up to the step. And you would do that a few more times going up the stairs. I'm gonna see if I can angle this a little bit so that you can see my face, because I want to show you another little trick. So another trick I can do here is I can use my eyes. So I'm going to put my left heel on the step, and I'm going to connect the left ribs, and then I'm going to look to the left. That's just going to neurologically help me shift better to that left side. So on your left, you're sensing left heel to midfoot. Great. You would do a flight of stairs like that 4 or 5 times. Now on your right side, it's almost exactly the same. Still going to turn my zipper to the right because I still need to be able to go right, left. But the tendency here is I want to go too far right. Just because I'm more comfortable here, I just love going over there. I lose my whole left side and right stance. So to not lose that, I'm going to do all those things, but I'm also going to sense my right arch in my shoe, and I'm still going to look to the left. And I don't know if you saw my leg wobbling, but my leg really wanted to pull me back out to the outer edge of my foot, and I had to really concentrate, not work physically, but work mentally to keep my right arch down, and looking to the left kept me over there. So really, just shifting your awareness a little bit can change the way that your body will sense the ground and change the way that you'll be able to move and shift right to left. And I always feel like I have to catch my breath after doing that exercise. Surprisingly challenging, but really nice for balancing you right to left. Okay. So I also wanted to talk about something that I hear a lot from patients, and I see a lot online when I'm looking at stuff about running or about shoes. And I just want to put out there that pronating is not a bad thing. I feel that pronation has become this kind of curse word in the world of running, because people say, oh, we have all these anti-pronation shoes, and people say, oh, my feet are too pronated, and that's just not, it's not correct, because pronation, i.e. your arch is coming down, your foot flattening out, is a normal and very necessary part of not only running, but just walking. So the way our foot works when we walk is we start in supination, and as our heel hits the ground, we pronate to shock absorb. And then as we go to push off our big toe, we resupinate so we have a rigid lever to push off of. So if we're never pronating, we're never shock absorbing. And people always say, well, running is such a high impact activity, I can't do this high impact activity because it's bad for my joints. Well, obviously, if you're not shock absorbing well, it's not going to feel good on other joints. So we need to be able to transition both sides between pronation and supination, and just understand that your right side tends to supinate more and your left side tends to pronate more. If you're very extended, i.e. ribs up, pelvis forward, both sides will supinate because you'll be pushed onto the outside edges of your feet by your pelvis tipping forward. And even if you have flat feet or your feet seem very flat to the ground, that isn't necessarily indicative of what your feet do when you walk, run, or stand. So it's not very cut and dry, and I wouldn't recommend that everybody go out and get anti-pronation shoes. In fact, I would advise against that. You want to just, when you look at your shoe, just make sure that it's pretty flat across the back of the shoe so it's not higher on the instep to anti-pronate. And I'll spend a whole session talking about shoes and finding the right shoe for you, I believe in session 5, so 2 weeks from now. But that's just a little pet peeve of mine that I wanted to share, and I, of course, share with me your thoughts on that as well if you have any or you don't agree. Okay, so I do want to add, pronating, if you're too pronated, that can be a problem if everything's pronating and you're just collapsed in. And you see what I just did there? I just kind of crumpled. That's like my whole body pronating. Of course, when you go to sleep and you want everything to relax, but during your day, you want to be able to be upright and have some degree of supination through your feet and your body. So arches a little bit aware and awake and lifting. Have you ever seen when you go to some of those gift shops and amusement parks and they have those little dolls that you push a button underneath and it just kind of crumples? That's what I think of when I think of your whole body kind of pronating. And that's what I think of when you don't have both diaphragms doming and you don't have your pelvic floor ascending and a little bit of awareness in your arches. That's kind of, you're just going to crumple because you don't have stability. So what that looks like is if my feet just pronate and then I let my whole body kind of go with it, that's not a good thing, right? We want to be able to push the ground away. So what I think is ideal is if you can get your arches down, but then maintain that push up of the ground, that glute push. So I'm pushing the ground away, but sensing my arches. So if you stand up and try this and just sense the arches of your shoe, but then push the ground away with your heels and arches, and you might feel your glutes pushing and you might feel your abdominals engaging. And that's a really strong and stable place to be, maintaining pronation with the push. So you look at some people when they do heavy lifting and squatting, and they'll kind of go to the outside edges of their feet to stabilize, to push up. That is not a strong position, but it's also not strong to collapse in. So if you can maintain that pronation and the softening down of your feet, and then keep that pronation through the feet as you push up, and maintain that glute push as you pronate, that's a much more stable position to work from. That's a lot of information, but I'm just trying to give you some guidance on, it's complex the way our bodies work and we need to transition through a lot of different patterns. But as a runner, It's important to be able to sense the ground, especially that right arch and left heel to midfoot. And it's also important to be able to maintain that sense of push. And in order to be able to maintain a sense of push, you need to be able to push off of your right big toe, both big toes, but especially your right, to engage your glutes that are going to help push you over to the left so that you can transition back to the right. I also talk about using your glutes to help you push in session 2, so you can check out that as well. But another area that you can be aware of when running in your running stride is make sure you're rolling over and pushing off with your big toe on the right. If you do have a limitation in your big toe where you have hallux rigidus or that toe doesn't move or you have some kind of injury there, you can get a rocker shoe where the toe box doesn't bend, it just kind of rolls over it, like Hoka's have some shoes like that. But if your toe bends, push off of it. It's very important that you do that. A lot of runners will run with their toes out, so they're pushing off the inside edges of their feet, and they're not recruiting their glutes properly because they're not pushing off over their big toe, rolling right over their big toe and pushing with it. So it's just a fun activity to try. Next time you go out for a run, think of pushing with your big toes and rolling right over that big toe, and just sense how that provides you propulsion forward with a push, and you won't need to pull yourself with your neck and your hip flexors. So when you run, think of pushing yourself forward instead of pulling yourself forward. So aside from all those tips, I just wanted to share with you a couple other tips that you can think about when you're running. And obviously, all of these might apply to you, but it's probably going to be just one or two things. So when you're out running, it's just not possible or helpful to try to think about feeling your feet and swinging your right arm and your left arm and right leg, striding out with your left arm and your right leg, and then also pushing off with your big toes. But what you could do is experiment with them and see which ones really help you feel better while you're running. You should feel immediately like if something was hurting, but then you start sensing your right arch and you go, oh, my right knee doesn't hurt anymore. That means it's probably helpful for you. Or you can see how you feel after a run. You can try 3 different runs or walks or hikes and just see how you feel incorporating one of these concepts some of the time to determine what's right for you and what your body needs. And if you're still not sure after trying that, please do reach out to me and I can help guide you through that. So some other things to think about when you're running is a lot of my patients who are dealing with injuries and they want to get back to running, the hardest thing for them is going downhill. Understandably so, because if we think about the mechanics of that, when we're running is already an extended activity, and then we start to go downhill and that makes us extend even more, and we're looking down. And when you look down, your body extends, right? So if you can look at the horizon when you're running, that'll help keep you neutral. But when you're running downhill, you kind of have to look down. And that's going to make us extend, and extension doesn't let us shift right to left, right? So when you're running downhill, first of all, the first thing to do is if you're confident and you know the trail you're running on and it's not rocky and you're not going to trip, try to keep your gaze a little more ahead. But obviously, safety first. And if you need to look down for your safety. But you can think even more about exhaling those ribs down and your pubic bone up a little bit towards your belly button. So what I mean by that is your pubic bone is right here, and just kind of thinking about connecting these points when you're going downhill. You don't want to necessarily be super tucked all the time, but when you're going downhill, it is nice to think about getting that tailbone to tuck a little bit. Another really great tip and trick for going downhill is walking and weaving, or running and weaving. So instead of just going straight down, you can just kind of weave along the path if it's a wide path. And it doesn't have to be like you're zigzagging. You can kind of gradually make your way to one side and gradually back to the other. Just, of course, doing what's safe. You know, if there's bikers and other people, you don't want to be just weaving everywhere, but if you have the opportunity to do that, or maybe you can just kind of do that in your lane, just a little weave. Not, and people think, oh, that's great. Yes, because it's not as steep of a grade. Well, yes, but what else is it doing? It's letting you transition right, left, right? Half the time this pelvis is forward, now this pelvis is forward. It's keeping you able to rotate, keeping you out of so much extension that you can't alternate and reciprocate. So that's a nice little trick for downhills as well. And I still use that if I have the opportunity, and I find it helpful. So I kind of mentioned, but every now and then, just take a big exhale through your mouth and, you know, let your lower front ribs soften down and in. Because inevitably, as you run, they're going to work their way up. And you just have to remember to just now and then reconnect. It's not that every moment of every step of your run, you're going to be exhaling like that. It's not realistic, and it's just not helpful to do that. But every now and then, take a few breaths and let some air out and pause and really make that connection. One more little trick is kind of stopping and starting your running to start yourself in a good position. So I'll show you this one. It's different for walking versus running. So if you're a walker, I'll show you what to do first, and then I'll show you what to do second as a runner. So we established that you're more comfortable, just because you're a human being, standing on your right leg. So most of us, when we start walking, we'll kind of start leading with our left leg, with our right leg being the stance leg. So to mitigate that, what you do is put your right foot a little forward, shift your zipper to the left, find your left heel, and then bring your left arm forward, right arm back, and just have your right foot be the first one that's swinging for walking, right? When you're running, it's a little bit different. You actually want to start standing on your right leg and then land onto your left leg to run. See what I did there? I started standing on my right leg, and I lifted my left leg and started the run on my left leg. The reason it's different when you run is because you want that left leg to be the first one pushing you forward, right? That first pushing leg. So you can try those if you're out for a long run or a long walk and things are starting to just feel a little off. Just stop. If you're a walker, just get into that left hip, lift your right leg, and just start walking. If you're a runner, stand on your right leg and then start running with your left leg being the first one to start the run. If that makes sense. Last thing I'm going to share with you is opening up your peripheral vision. So just in general, we kind of tend to close ourselves, especially if we wear hats and things like that. And that's sometimes not avoidable, but being aware of the sides of your vision. So right now, if you're looking at your screen or you're looking at me, but you're still aware there are things on the sides of the room without having to look at them. So when you run, it will help you get neutral in your body if you're being aware of opening up your peripheral vision, especially your left peripheral vision. So while you're running, you're looking ahead, you're looking where you're going, and you're looking out for obstacles, people, dogs, rocks, whatever, but you're just kind of noticing, oh, tree, bush, jogger, just like things that are coming in your left peripheral vision without looking over there. You can glance there, but I'd rather you just look straight ahead and just see that left side of the world going by you. It's a really nice tool that is accessing your neurology to help you shift better side to side and get into that left side. So that is all I have for you guys for today's session. And you can tune in next Saturday at 10:30 a.m. on April 18th, I believe. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. I'm going to also put links in there for you guys to um, access some exercises that I talked about today if you don't already have the handouts. And if you found this helpful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Daria Anderson, and you can find a lot of great resources there, and also my website, myessentialpt.com. Lots of good tools and tips and tricks there to help you move better and feel better in your body. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and I'll be around for a little while longer to answer questions. Thank you.